Good evening, everyone. Hello. Um, Welcome. We're just going to do the awkward minute or so while people arrive. Probably won't be a minute, but it'll feel like one. It'll feel like one for sure. Um,
Hello, Rosemary.
Hi, Rosemary. Yes, please do use the chat. We really like that. Let us know where you're watching from, who you are. Always nice to get a sense of who's here and where you are,
hmm
what you're drinking, what you're eating. Um,
Oh, Simon, hello.
yes, I'm imagining there'll be some people here that Mark knows.
Mm,
Canterbury. So we've got the southeast covered there, Brighton, Canterbury. And Worcester,
Worcester.
Catherine Redford, who was one of our Birmingham editorial readers group members, which I will
Indeed.
talk about in a moment. Um, Vancouver, yes, I thought we'd be fully international, although obviously uh, Mark's an island and the chap
Mm.
who will be joining
Hello,
us
Steve.
unbelievably at the front is in Brisbane.
Hi, Hannah. I'm looking forward to the event on Saturday, Hannah.
Hannah, that's author who I had this copy with. Um, and use the chat as well for questions. There's a Q&A function as well. I can be across both. We will have some readings from the book. I have a couple of easy questions for Mark. It'd be lovely if you had some that arose from Mark's reading. Drop them in any time and I'll scroll up and ask them at the end. I think that's people slowing down, joining. So we will start and officially welcome you to the launch of Masters by Mark Ward. Not all copies look like this. My cat and some sellotape destroyed this one. But you can see Mark was holding his copy up, and you can see the
It's
beautiful.
kind of fitting, though. I feel like the characters of the book would vibe with the fact that it was
Yeah,
kind of torn.
I kind of didn't realize as well. So it almost looks like
Yeah,
a sort of artist
it
impression.
does.
But
Yeah,
this is
it's an artist
officially.
edition one of one.
Sorry, Mark. Go on.
It's an artist edition one of one.
Yeah, I'll get you to sign it on the weekend. Um,
For sure.
uh, we're working efficiently. Sorry, it's officially publication day. That's what I was going to say. We don't often always do the launches on publication day, so this one feels extra nice. My name's James. I am the director of the Emma Press, the publishers of this. Um, if you don't know about us, we are a Birmingham-based publisher of poetry, of course, and prose as well, founded by Emma Diane Wright in 2012 with a kind of mission to make literature and publishing as welcoming and as accessible as possible. Um, Open submissions twice a year. I'm sure there's plenty of writers here. We publish about 8 or 10 books each year for adults and for children now. And at least a couple of those books continue to be poetry pamphlets, which we all love making and putting out into the world still. I mentioned Catherine was in the chat there. Wanted to particularly highlight that Masters was selected by our first Birmingham editorial readers group. Um, and that was a project we ran in 2023, 24, inviting keen local readers to kind of join us in our decision-making process. And in the end, I guess we had 6 people at the end who were brilliant. And in Mark's open submission, I think about 500 submissions were received in our writing submission round. And we presented the group with a long list of 25, which across 6 sessions, they whittled down to a shortlist before ultimately selecting 2 books for publication. And it was a unanimous decision to publish Masters. I looked up some of our old notes of what people said. I thought I'd raise
Mm.
uh, the group said we were convinced by Ward's deep engagement with works of art, particularly by the pamphlet's beautiful images and striking world building in these poems investigating queer history and shame. It was a reading
Mm.
experience akin to walking around a gallery led by the poet's intricate and sensitive gaze,
Oh,
which
that's lovely.
was very nice. And were my feelings
Mhm.
exactly, yeah, not just a kind of big plastic collection. I don't think Mark is coming at them with
Mm.
imagined points of view of the painter and of the painting's subjects or muses, and at times also like of us as viewers, and examines ways of looking, but also kind of ways of feeling. Um, uh, so yes, we are very fond of this pamphlet. Delighted to bring it to you. Very happy to say, obviously, Mark is here to read from and talk about the book and answer your questions, should you have them. Say, also very excited to say we have a second reader to help us celebrate the launch, Jarad Bruinstroop, who is joining us all the way from Australia for what is, I think, just past 4 in the morning. So we'll look forward to introducing him shortly as Mark holds up his lovely cover, which isn't quite handling the blur, but
It's Reliefs. The book is called Relief. Sorry.
it's called Wednesday. But we'll put a link in the chat as well. But firstly, let's have Mark and let's hear from Mark. Huge congratulations, I always say, and thank you so much for trusting us with your work. I was going to ask a question because I asked it to Lewis, who was the other poet who was selected by the group. I wondered how it felt from the author's side to know that you were being kind of considered, but like also ultimately kind of selected as well by a larger collective of editors, not just us.
It felt lovely, and I remember when I got on the long list, a poet that I love was like, "Well done, you got on the long list." I was like, "That's great. Yeah, no, I'm delighted. Like, I'm not going to get any further, so that's great. Like, that's thrilling." And then I kept going, and I was like, "You sure?" But listen, it's been the BRG. They're going to come back again now, aren't they? They're being funded again to do this again. I think
Yeah,
that's
we've
so
got
brilliant to kind of, yeah, to reach out and kind of bring people in, and to not kind of gatekeep kind of editorial decisions and stuff like that. Look, it's a dream come true. Um, you have all been so wonderful to work with and so supportive and attentive and caring, and you have been an absolute dream to work with. And I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart and all the care and time and attention you put into this. It really, really means a lot.
Well, it means a lot to us as well. That wasn't the question, but thank you very much. We will
Okay, sorry.
no, I'm joking. We'll
How
deliver
does
your
it
money.
feel?
We'll deliver your money later for that very time. Why don't we get away from the politeness and just hear a poem? Would be great.
Okay. So the first poem I'll read just as an intro is after Jared French's painting Evasion. Once taught, shame lives in your hands, covering your unreliable body. It stares at you through the mirror, staring you down, the weight of your head crushing your fingers, your groin, still naive and faultless and causing all of this trouble. Your skin is the problem. You dress blue for a boy, and as commanded, you pray, hands clasped for a reprieve from these feelings. This is not my hand, you whisper after lights out. The darkness silently agrees, as it has done for centuries. A hand slides across fabric, across skin, down to an opening. Each closed eyelid is a viewmaster secretly replaying what got you here. Keep it vague, don't name him. The brain conjures his face, his hands. And you're screaming, stifled, yes, but joyous. They won't take this from you. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you very much. And I'm sure we will hear more from Mark. And oh yeah, use those reaction buttons. I like those too. So we know that you're listening. We'll hear more from Mark. And what about masses about? I'm going to hear from a support reader. I was going to ask Mark, was there a particular reason why you asked Jarad to read?
Yeah, no, I just felt a real kinship when I read his book release, because it also talks about it responds to paintings in what I felt was a similar way, a kind of kindred point of view and a kindred spirit in the way he writes about it. And like he writes about some of the same painters, and there's a poem in this written by Vivian after Vivian Forbes's painting. He has poems after Glenn Phillippott's paintings, who was his husband. You know what I mean? So it just seemed to overlap in a really beautiful way.
Brilliant. I'll read Jarad's biography and we'll get him up a camera. Jarad Bruinstroop's debut collection, as Mark said, Reliefs, was published in 2023. It won the Wesley Michelle Wright Prize, the Five Islands Poetry Prize, the Thomas Shapcott Poetry Prize, and was shortlisted for the Judith Wright Calanthe Prize. He's a recipient of the Val Villis Award, the Queensland Writers Fellowship, and the Friar Library Creative Writing Fellowship. He holds a PhD in creative writing from QUT, which he now teaches, and that is in Brisbane, presumably, which is where he is joining us from this evening for us, this ungodly hour in the morning for him. So welcome, Jarad.
Thank you very much. I'm delighted to be here to help launch Masters into the world. So thank you very much, Mark, for inviting me. I'm really excited. And I'm delighted to be joining you from Meanjin, Brisbane. I'm on the unceded lands of the Yagara and Turrbal peoples, and I pay my respects to their elders, past and present. I'm especially excited to be reading because, like Mark, I really recognize the synchronicity and simpatico between our work, up to and including the fact that completely unplanned, we're both starting with Jared French poems. Um, in this case, in my poem, French is the subject of a painting painted by his partner at the time, Paul Cadmus. So, I mean, let the synchronicities commence, right? How cool is that?
Hmm.
So I'm kicking off with a poem called Traveling Companion, which is written in response to this Paul Cadmus portrait of Jared French called Jerry, which, if you get the chance, is a smoking hot portrait. So I recommend checking it out. This is Traveling Companion. In Porto de Andrade, we wake after the dark-haired fishermen reach the far side of the bay. A sponge bath over the basin, a shave. For hours we draw on cheap newsprint until the sun clears the mountains and the light shifts from Pinot Gris to buttermilk. Then we eat oranges and figs. For hours we paint oil on canvas, two easels facing away from each other on the small terrace. Before day fades, we walk the pie crust beaches of little coves, slip out of our clothes and swim. Back at the pension, no carpet, only a charcoal stove. I nap in the echoes of the afternoon. Later, I see you've sketched me sleeping, my body reclining towards the horizon like the headland. I cook you tomatoes and eggs. When the lamp is lit, you read aloud to me from bed, while I make sketches for a painting I will begin tomorrow. Okay, I'm going to read a couple of Francis Bacon poems now, because that's another kind of connection that our two books have. So I've got two for you. This first one responds to Francis Bacon's painting Two Figures from 1953. And very imaginatively, I've called it Two Figures. If you want me to move with you into the garage off the motorway, you'd better give me the bullwhip and a slug of champagne. You know I can't love you any other way than desperate and cleaned out on the high street after you've fled in a taxi bound for Tangier. You beast, you brute, play me a tune on the fag end piano and I'll bootblack my hair and roll on the floor like a newborn in a pile of straw. If you want me up on stage in front of my friends, you'd better give me a push down the piss-stench stairs into the dustbins, or a shove through a plate glass window so my eye is slashed to ribbons. Call mother. Tell her daughter is coming to collect her 10 quid and fishnets. If you want me only after he's had me, send a telegram. I'll be up early either way. I never bruise. I'm talking bollocks. Okay, and then another one that responds to another Francis Bacon painting from the same year. This one is Two Figures at a Window. I might stop being Francis Bacon, just for the evening. I'll give my rapier wit a rest, wash the taste of risk from my mouth with a nice cup of tea, deflate myself somehow, let all that hard-won air out. I'll be just like all those other silly buggers when they read Sir John's been done, importuning male persons for immoral purposes. I won't burn my love letters because I've got none, but I will turn to my lover as we're standing by the window and say something like, I know we're due at Muriel's soon, but maybe tonight, while laws are broken and enforced outside, we can shuffle around the living room, one human body attuned to another, while soft jazz plays or doesn't play. Okay, this one responds to a portrait of the great New York school poet Frank O'Hara by Larry Rivers. And they had a real complicated relationship. And if you know Larry Rivers at all, he's a real complicated kind of guy. But I was really struck by this portrait. And this one is called Nude with Boots. Not the man you got into the ring with, but a statue, mean and modern. Somewhere between a lamp and a window stands a monument to excess sentiment in his lover's combat boots and nothing else. Hands clasped on his head, arms splayed to make a cobra's hood, an Irish Massimo Contrapposto to give you the full view, each pink and cream inch. Remember this body, how it jabbed and hooked and rolled over? How we were both surprised in the end by a prize fighter, one foot hoisted on a cinder block, saying, Look, here is everything you didn't want, or only wanted sometimes. And here is that Glenn Philpott connection. This one is after a different painting of his called Le Jongleur de Notre Dame. Pardon my French. And I've titled it Our Lady's Juggler. The cathedral made room for a juggler because he was handsome in the light of heaven. In front of the statue of Mary, Mother of God, he threw everything up into the air. Grace, faith, his own lithe physique. Like Jesus, he performed tricks with his body. Like Jesus, his sweat fell to the ground like great drops of blood. Not actual blood, a simile. Still, he waited for the statue to embrace him. Okay, I'm sort of personally very excited to read this next short one because I have a little sleep disorder. That means I'm often up at this time for me, 4 a.m. So I'm writing poems and often thinking about my partner. And he regularly complains that he is usually depicted in my poems as being asleep. He feels like that's kind of a slur on him. That's kind of an insult. These things, people must think I sleep all day. Um, and it's true that in this poem there is a little image of him, sort of frankly asleep in the next room. But for the first time I'm reading it while he's actually asleep in the next room, which I just think is kind of cool. I almost kind of want to wake him up to tell him, but then I'm sure he'll rouse on me for making a point of it. So anyway, this one's called Silent Film. As you sleep in the next room, I watch Genèse Enchantement. A prisoner is in love with the murderer in the next cell. He kisses the concrete between them. The guard is jealous. The prisoner threads straw from his mattress through a hole in the wall, blows cigarette smoke into the mouth of his bow. When the guard attacks him, the prisoner dreams he escapes and chases the young murderer through flowering woods. They drop, noiseless, on the grass. while I listen to the private sounds you make in sleep. Okay, just two more from me to round out my set. This one responds to Matthew Bourne's Swan Lake, which you might know is the production of Swan Lake where all the swans are danced by male dancers. So it's called Pas de Deux for Silhouette and Swan after Matthew Bourne's Swan Lake. If you're still looking after they've called last drinks, and the boy has emptied ashtrays and collected glasses, you can see silhouettes of infamous men slip down side streets, dodge streetlights along footpaths, then disappear somewhere into the shadows of the public park. There, between trees that surround the lake, neither close nor far apart, they shift on their feet like horses, waiting flank by flank behind starting gates, until the men arrive, dressed as swans, and begin their dance, during which nobody fucks and nobody drowns. Okay, one little short one to finish up. This one is called Caravaggio, which you might know is the term for painters who sort of followed in the style of Caravaggio, although it's written in response to paintings by a painter named Giovanni Baglioni, who didn't think of himself as Caravaggio, but he was. So it's called Caravaggio. You painted the three men twice, in almost the same configuration. First, the angel wears plate armor, and the devil's head turns away. Later, the angel wears silk, and the devil has your enemy's face. Cupid remains naked in both paintings. Explain to me again, my love, the difference between jealousy and envy. I remember it has something to do with a desire to possess. Thank you very much. That's it from me. I'm delighted to be here. Congratulations, Mark. It's such a beautiful book. I adored it. I'm so excited that it's going to be out in the world for everyone else to read. And I can't wait to hear you read from it as well in just a minute. So thank you very much for having me. It was a real pleasure. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Jared. That was brilliant. I feel really lucky that we managed to get you to do that at 4 a.m. But thank
Absolutely.
an
Thank you,
incredible,
Jarad.
and yeah, an incredibly apt choice for a co-reader. Going to roll straight into Mark reading, but I thought I would give you his biography too, because I'm sure there's people here who might be encountering Mark and his work for the first time. Um, so, born and based in Dublin, Mark is the author of the collection Nightlight, which came out with Salmon Poetry, and 5 other previous pamphlets. Right. He is the founding editor of Impossible Archetype, which is an international journal of LGBTQ plus poetry. A second collection called Real Estate will be published by Salmon Poetry next year. For the meantime, his pamphlet Masters is out now from the Emma Press. I'll leave it to Mark.
Thank you so much, James. And Jarad, thank you so much for that beautiful reading. And all of the overlaps are just wonderful. And I'm going to change a little bit of my set actually to respond to your overlaps. But first, I thought, like we all should, or like I should, I would open with the opening poem of the book. And it's after Henry Bishop's landscape, urban landscape, a street in Carrara. The windows are abandoned. Plasterboard leans against the wall like a teen smoking. Mold collects at the base of the apartments. A black mark smudged. Mother's spit washed dirty faces, scowling at traffic. Jimmy's uncle's beard. A fridge left out in the sun. Debris smashed in half. In quarters is still debris. The developer wrote them off. Marco and his mother live in the empty building. She won't survive winter. There is nothing beyond this street. They throw rocks at cars that dare to pass. Matteo beats up his best friend. The others know not to ask questions, show pity. Today, Jimmy arrives empty-handed. Matteo is too sober for the sunlight, blinding like a single bulb and swings. Marco, trying to stop him, gets a smack. His mother is slowly coughing up her lungs, can't stop it. Marco doesn't fight back. Jimmy never fought anyone. Matteo allows himself to succumb to gravity, falling into the rubble. A moment to swan dive, a new scar, maybe. Instead, he sees her in the window. She's stopped coughing. She's smiling, looking at birds, bisecting the blue sky. The others are busy staring down the world as it speeds away. Matteo hands around a hip flask, pretending tomorrow will be exactly the same. Thank you. I thought I would continue with the next poem in the pamphlet, which is after Patrick Proctor's painting Al, which is a rather moody, racy portrait of a guy in a white vest and tidy whities. He talks about his boys, all loyal alphas, equals obsessed with the deal, the sail held aloft. He lets his trousers fall, peels off his commie shirt, arms at his feet, the ideal, a Sam in underwear. He leans against the wall, fully aware how fatal his calves are, how the light enlarges his crotch, just how small he can make me. His next poem is after Philip Core's painting The Jewel, and it is a painting in 4 parts. And I suppose I tried to capture the movement in it. When we wrestle, we cease to be separate. I touch you intimately, like when you took me dancing. We two stepped out into the night, forgetting safety, our beauty haloed with moonlight, the beach ours. You wrench me off my feet, their eyes changing everything, an audience braying. Your limbs, a new context, the capacity for joy deadened. You're careful for what is a wrestle, if not passion, stopped short. So, after Jared's poem about Francis Bacon's Two Figures, I felt I could not read my own, which is 3 studies of Two Figures after Francis Bacon. Wrestle, a laugh and bony fingers, breath on the neck, guffawing, trapped when his hand first reached his fingers, peeling Venus fly, trapped. Comedy is subjective. He's reduced us to a squirm. Transit, an intermediate, the walls irrelevant, the grapple blinkers, roly-poly pudding, he calls me in, the jumble of limbs we are in the voiding. Black holes, there is only skin touching in great leaps, a basket rolling downhill, ready, willing to be dashed. Pressure, your eyes staring, holding, you won't try to explain away this grease, the dirt, your voice stowed overhead, the ceiling, something not, your fucking eyes so late, and this time cannot watch the sheets absorb the dirt, my body floating. I hear your voice, I try to speak, and you. At each of the 3 readings this week, I have decided to dip into the archive. So I wrote more poems than I published because that's how it works. Some of them were just rubbish, and some of them just didn't fit. This was the first poem written, and given this is launch day, I thought I would read it. I also thought I would kind of break the rules somewhat and show you where it all started. So this is, I don't know if you can't see it. This is a big book of Derek Jarman. Never mind. I forgot there's a blur on it. I don't know how to turn it off. But it's a painting of Derek Jarman's called The Landscape with Blue Pool. And it was the first poem written for the whole project and set off 2 years' work. So it's going to be read tonight once and then never again, although it'll obviously be available on the recording. Landscape with blue pool. The lie detector wavers. A line becomes enforced perspective, a single pole missing the rest of the goal's frame. Mountains and their irresponsible grandeur score themselves through our greenery. Your addition of rocks trailing behind like sediment insist on an horizon like a squint. I cast a shadow, draw a no man's land ravine deep and hidden in 2 dimensions. 2 rusted posts straddle it. An arc courses off. You insist on the pool, that it has always been here and that it was not built to reflect anything. There is nowhere for us to sit. You disappear into the rockery where lines almost converge. I watch you go and step back to take in everything. I attach the frame you picked and throw a blanket over it. This next poem is after the artist Felix Gonzalez Torres, who's an American artist, late 80s, early 90s. His work very much is about kind of gay life and about HIV and AIDS. Both his partner and he succumbed to the illness. I made a slight change to this poem just before publication, and I changed the word. The word is grids, which some of you may know was what HIV and AIDS was first referred to as, which was gay-related immune disease. So this is after his painting, untitled False Hope Bloodwork. But some of you might know him from a more conceptual piece. He had a piece called Untitled Portrait of Ross in LA. And it was a giant pile of candies that weighed the same as his partner who died. And obviously, people would take the candies and be encouraged to do it, and it would diminish over time. And weirdly, what's been happening late, because obviously he's not around anymore, his work is kind of being dequeered. It's kind of being presented without this context. So I think that's what prompted me to put in the word grids and to give this introduction and to read this poem. Untitled False Hope Bloodwork, after Felix Gonzalez Torres. I shade in the grids of my notebook, dispelling its blankness for good. Each tiny square is an act I decide, a public action, and each man is tattooed in black ink. Enough space to write the complication of life being multiple choice. I populate an inverse night sky. I use the spirit level to score the page, the pencil bleeding through, dividing us. We can live in boxes before and after. The page splits, bin it. The cut on every new page, the first line. Similarly, in a kind of slightly more lighthearted way, there's an Irish painter called Jarad Bruinstroop, and this is after his poem Medical Students, which is a poem, quite a colourful poem where it's a picture of a bed and 3 male students are in it, and I can't exactly remember where it was, but they were like, sure, they're all very tired from their long day work, and sure, there's nothing beyond that, and and they were roommates defense. So that's where kind of this poem comes in. It's Medical Students after Jarad Bruinstroop. Sick all week, I stare at these 3 asleep in the one bed. Their home wrapped inside a person. More specifically, your arms, my head atop your shoulder, my head in profile on your chest, my head nestling into the crook of your arm, enveloping me. After we broke up, we couldn't figure out how to have this. Before you left, we'd hug, but it had a time limit. A few seconds where it would feel like home, but then we'd remember. So the next poem I am going to read is after Henry Scott Tuke's The Critics, which is the cover of Master. This is a crop of the painting. And apologies, it's a dreaded prose poem. The critics after Henry Scott Chuk. The younger boy, floating in the water, blushes rose pink. The older boys have seen everything between his strip and dip, a fumble face first into green-blue water, shimmering like the Mediterranean. They want to fuck him. Henry might want to fuck them all, we think, examining his paintings, naked boys sprawled everywhere. The canon of gay art is, to say the least, problematic. Are the older boys about 16 with the younger being 14, 13? I don't want to hold up something untoward, but then maybe we are making it pornographic. Perhaps the boys are just friends, but then Henry is the problem, painting his swathes of adolescent flesh, right? I turn instead to his cadet on Newport Beach near Falmouth with another boy in the sea, and here the boys both look 14. One in the water like before, the other clothed and contemplating. The cadet knows what it will take to strip in front of that bobbing head, aware that nothing is innocent. Not when your heart's in it like that. He strips, gets into the sea, and kisses the boy, both having dreamed of this for months, but that's not what we see. We see him before any decision is made, still thinking it through. He better not stay too long, Henry considers. But really, the cadet is waiting for Henry to look elsewhere before he makes his move. Thank you all for attending and for listening. I have 3 more poems to read. This is after, he's such a fun name to say, Yanis Sarouchis. Yanis Sarouchis' painting Soldier Dancing. He throws an arm into the empty space you left. He hikes his trousers up, legs combative. He invites the dark wall in front of him to dance. He cries softly but won't let it interfere with his shuffling. He moves in unnecessary ways you would understand. Softer than his regimented life, he is inefficient and wallows in it. He makes space within his frame for you to nestle into. There can be no one else against his skin. His fatigues cut into him. He takes off his shirt, his trousers, his boots. In his underwear, he offers his hand. The rest of the bar watches, knowing a gunshot separates them. He waltzes, leaving room for you to appear, cradling the empty air. So we mentioned Vivian Forbes and Glenn Philpott earlier, and this was the poem that I was referring to. The bit of information here is after Glenn died, Vivian could not take it anymore, and very shortly after his funeral, sadly took his own life. Romantic landscape after Vivian Forbes. I painted it in colors that you love. Deep umbers, pale pink granite, a bright red in the corner like a controlled fire, surrounded by a mute, wet autumn. The service was a blur of suits and hands. I sobbed in the back like a black hole, gasping. Your parents expected to bury you when you told them that I was your husband, treating us as the criminals we were, but love never felt like that. I wrote you odes to wake up to, painted how you made me feel. The pills slide inside me. I swallow pastel, chalk, the pigment on my fingers, the fire you started to keep us warm. The closest thing that approximates a happy poem comes at the end. And I took a lovely painting of Henry Scott Craig and turned it into, among other things, a poem about cruising. Thank you all for listening. Sunset after Henry Robertson Craig. The sea has called the tides in for dinner. We walk the strand, submerged throughout the day, relishing the wet sand hugging our boots. The first dinghy we come to is occupied. Tom from last month, supine and stargazing, watches us pass in his periphery. We find a small sailboat and settle in. For once, we seem equally excited. We watch the sunlight become indirect. You worry that the dunes are busier. I kiss you And it feels like the fun fair where we first met. The others are watching the boys we were find each other again. Thank you for listening.
Right. It's brilliant. So good to hear these poems that we've, yeah, been reading for such a long time, not hearing in your voice. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
If anyone has questions, please do put them in the chat. I have a couple myself. One of which you sort of touched on, but I'd love to hear more. I guess for me, like pamphlets can do kind of many things, but I really do love them as kind of a vehicle for a sort of momentary, or maybe not even momentary, obsession or just something that you're really keen to write about, I guess. So you mentioned Derek Jarman. When did you start writing these poems, and then what happened when you finished that first one that you read? Thank you for reading that. Really enjoyed it.
Thanks. When I finished the first one, I thought that's a nice poem, and then I didn't think anything more of it. And then I just kind of was intrigued by the whole German oeuvre and the book, and then I started reading about queer art, and then I wrote a poem about the Hockney, terrible poem about the Hockney painting A Bigger Splash, and I accreted them slowly, and then after about two or three, I was like, oh, I seem to be writing a thing, and pamphlets are great. Pamphlets are the right length for me, at least, to kind of fully explore a single concrete idea. I feel like collections are, you know, I think a lot of collections nowadays are single ideas, but for me, a collection is that it's a collection of themes and things working together, whereas a pamphlet is a space for just like it's like a paragraph, a single idea expounded upon to its full length. So yeah, it took a couple of years to write all the poems, and I ended up researching and talking to friends who suggested some painters that I didn't know, and reading books like Dr. Cicely Robinson's book on Henry Scott Tuke, and obviously curator Sean Kazan's book Protest, which is after the Derek Jarman exhibition. So yeah, and then a couple of years later, I had this book, and the only difference was Romantic Landscape was the last poem written. It was written after I originally wrote the book, and it just insisted about a year after I finished that I was like, no, you're not actually done. You have one more to write. So that's kind of how it came to a close.
That's nice. I think that's a beautiful segue into Rosemary's question in the chat, which is how did you decide which paintings an artist to write about? Did they just sort of call to you?
Yeah, I had a big Google Drive folder full of images, and I would open them up and scroll through them and let whatever call to me. I had a lot of images and a lot of painters, all of which are mentioned at the back, including some I wrote poems about, and others I didn't like. And some of them I loved, like Konstantin Somov's The Boxer, which was one of few people suggested me. It's a stunning, beautiful portrait of this muscular young man, and it's so enigmatic, but it just didn't. I loved it, but not in a way. It's like when you love a song, but then if you want to sing the song, you're like, well, I wouldn't sing that song, but I still love the song. It's that kind of relationship with similar relationship with some of the other painters like William Bruce Ellis Rankin, Willem Rondeau, Roy de Maistre. You know, their work was really inspiring, and I don't think it would have happened unless I'd explored all of them. So it was just a really nice kind of hobby for a while, you know.
What was your history with visual art? Was it like, is it something that you were really into, or was this a part of the
Yeah,
process of getting into?
not hugely. I think this was kind of my way into it. I've always liked art and artists, but it's never been a huge passion. Like I'd always go to galleries if I was abroad and visit and kind of see things, but this was certainly the first time. There was a great journal, much missed, called Visual Verse, which was an ekphrastic journal, and they would put up a single image, and then they would publish an issue of all the responses that they accepted, and that kind of sparked the kind of ekphrastic world to me. So I think that was kind of training ground for this. So shout out to Visualverse.
Yeah, I remember Visualverse.
Mm.
Yeah, I forgot about it.
Yeah,
Didn't
they
I?
were
I
great.
assume it's not happening now. Yeah, but I forgot that that email
Yeah, it stopped. It stopped a while ago.
stopped.
Yeah.
But yeah, always a really enjoyable prompt. But we have another question
Mm.
from Alexis. When writing these poems, how did you balance their narration based on what you learned about the painting slash artist with their more abstract elements? Yes,
Mm.
balance the narration with their more abstract elements.
Well, I think Romantic Landscape is really the only one that is about a truth, like a concrete thing to do with the painters. The rest of them were just kind of myself kind of reading into the painting and reading what I saw into the painting and the various characters, like Bernard Perland, The Farewell, which I turned into like a little threesome murder thing. Which it
Oh,
was just the way that the figures were doing. So it just kind of like gave me I let my imagination kind of run off and creatively respond to it, you know?
it's really cool. I think I sort of said this in the intro, but
Mm,
yeah, what I really loved was the different kind of approaches
mm,
to your ways in, I suppose.
mm.
And I think yeah, you'll find yourselves when you get the collection reading it through once, I think, without looking, and then poring over Google and looking at these paintings. And yeah, I think for me that's sort of second reading flagged up even more, like an even greater.
That was really, yeah, that was really interesting. So Sean Kazan, the curator of IMA, Irish Museum of Modern Art, introduced, he did a beautiful introduction on Tuesday in Dublin. And he was initially like, are we going to show the paintings? Because like he
Mm,
comes from the world of visual art. He's like, are we going to show the paintings? I'm like, well, no, I mean, they're the inspiration, but like an ekphrastic poem fails if you need to see the painting. Like if it doesn't work as a poem, it fails, you know? Um, and he was like, well, it's really interesting to kind of not see the painting. And he was kind of like, I think, like you say, the first time you read it, hopefully they're getting their own images and imagery, and then to see how it correlates to what the painting actually is, you know?
yeah, I think especially the opening. I actually sort of in the background, you sent us a really handy file of all the
Mm,
paintings. And I was like, oh my God, should I actually? I was just had a sudden thought as well. Should I have these up? I might, depending
sure.
how the questions go. We've got one more question from Steve. Um, but I
Hmm.
might have you finish on one of my favorite ones with the painting in the background. Again,
Sure.
but, if that's of interest to people. But Steve's asked in the Q&A function that I said I would check, and he correctly flagged that I hadn't checked. Um, uh, of the pieces of art you've responded to in Masters, is there one in particular that stays with you?
Ooh. Um, hmm. I think the one that's jumping to mind at the moment is Roses in a Bedroom, just because I've had a lot of interesting chats with Sean Kazan, because he's written his PhD on Hennessy and like he's in a lot of ways the expert, and obviously we're coming at it from different approaches and seeing what we read into it. And we had a lot of interesting conversations about how, because it's a painting of roses in the foreground with an unmade bed, but it's a very, like, there's no figures in it, but it's an inherently queer post-coital painting. For like, if you know, you know. Other people, I'm sure, they'll be like, it looks lovely in my room, but it's kind of dealing with that like level of subtextual queer chaos, you know what I mean? So I think that kind of sticks out in my mind probably the most.
Um, yeah, really cool. There was one other thing I thought of as that kind of the interest as the hook, um,
Hmm.
uh, and it's kind of played out in this kind of ethereal conversation with the paintings. Yeah, I guess the idea of a sort of séance. So all the painters are dead. We should say, except Jasper Johns,
Except
but
for Jasper Johns,
he's
who's
still
still
going at
alive and kicking.
95. Um,
95, yeah.
um, was that a kind of self-imposed constraint that you put on yourself? or did it just happen naturally? Is it
Yes,
something? Is that an important kind of aspect for this?
it was definitely a self-imposed constraint. I always felt I never found. I always felt I was like the conceit was I responded to dead queer male painters' work, which I felt was too long, and I never found a shorter way of saying it. Um, but yeah, it's definitely queer history. If it's not interacted with, queer history, if the stories aren't told, will die. And there is definitely an element of that. I've had conversations with friends of mine, and I'm like, there's two kinds of gay people. This is my great grand theory in life. There's two kinds of gay people. There are people that being gay is incidental, and people that being gay is intrinsic. I am obviously the latter because I don't think I would have written this otherwise. So I think it's just definitely a way to kind of not only bring it to a larger platform, but that wasn't even the intention. It was a way for me to kind of interact with queer history and keep it alive. And it's lovely that this thing has happened, and hopefully, I heard a poet on Facebook has started to write his own acrostic poems after reading this, and I'm like, that's lovely. You know what I mean? So yeah, I think it's just a way to kind of keep it on trucking.
Yeah, that's really cool. And interested, I actually wondered if you could explain a bit more what you were mentioning about it was Felix Gonzalez Torres, you said, whose work
Mm.
is being dequeered. What could you explain what's happening?
Yeah, so like a portrait of Ross in LA, as I mentioned, was this big sculpture that is, I think, 175 pounds to represent Ross who's to come to HIV and AIDS. And it's sweets, and people are encouraged to take it and diminish it to show that. But it's just being stripped of the context in certain locations. And I've read articles about how is this coming from the estate? Is this coming from the institution? Where people are trying to figure out where this is coming because he's inherently queer artist, but he has reached kind of a pretty legendary status in American art, and I think that that's battling against his kind of status as a queer artist who had HIV and AIDS, and they're trying to kind of, let's focus on the legendary aspect as opposed to the rest. So I can't remember the specifics, but I know that is happening. So that's kind of me spurring and having this conversation about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he's a
Well, nice.
fantastic artist and very conceptual and but in a really accessible, interesting way.
And hopefully, well, I think we probably all agree that Masters is part of, as you said, doing that work of making sure these stories and the queerness of those artists is written and catalogued and
I
celebrated.
hope so.
Uh, I think there's no more questions. I am going to do my usual sum up, but I do think.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, no, there is one more question. Alexis has come in. We'll do that. Do you have any recommendations for contemporary queer artists to support and learn about? That's a great question.
Yes. Let me think. Let me think. God, there's so many that my brain is going blank. Ed Firth is a great queer comics artist based in England who has written two volumes of a fiction graphic novel called Horny and High. I've never read anything like it. It's incredibly explicit and queer and about kind of chemsex and stuff that's just not talked about and I've never seen before. And he is an absolutely stunning artist. And he also does drawing sessions in London on a Tuesday where you can go paint naked men, which seems very attractive. Ed Firth, who else? There, I mean, obviously, I've worked with queer artists as well for other, so like Matthew Bright, who's a graphic designer, does a lot of my covers, not masters, but he's done previous ones. I would recommend him. And just there's so many, like people like Brian Teeling, who would have exhibited at IMA before. I think he's really interesting in the way he approaches kind of queerness and intimacy and stuff like that. Um, yeah, my mind has gone blank otherwise, but there's three recommendations.
That's cool. Maybe that's something we can have you write a list
Yeah,
and put it on the book page.
yeah.
Which is an unintentional but useful segue to me posting um, about I have a link to the book. If you don't have it already, or if you don't have one for your friends and your family, then please please do get a copy. If you are sort of social medially inclined, it's lovely if you share pictures of things and talk about the books. It really does make a real difference to us as a press and to Mark and Masters and the success of both. Thank you so much, Jarad, again for that amazing reading and for joining us from Australia. It's a real pleasure to hear your work. And Mark, again, thank you for your reading and for trusting us with Masters. It's been really lovely to work on. I am going to try and share my screen just when I
love that you're not mentioning which poem it is. I love that it's being entirely left up to surprise.
It's okay. So I'm a real sucker for a good first poem, right? And when you sent us this, I loved the first poem, The Street in Carrara, and without seeing the painting. And then the second time I read it, I saw the painting, and it was one of those ones that once your writing expounded so far beyond the bounds of the painting in such a brilliant way that I really particularly admired that. So if we're going to read one and show against the painting, I thought that would be nice to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let me have a go. You're going to have to wait while technological things happen, unfortunately.
No problem. I will go into the thanks.
Managed to click away from it, which is great.
So I'll just shout out some names whilst you're doing that. Jasper Johns is alive, grand old age of 95. Thanks to Kit Fryatt, Andrew Hedl, Ben Morgan, Dr. Cicely Robson, John Wilson, and Bridgman Images, who helped us with the cover. Thanks to the Arts Council of Ireland, who gave me a bursary to work on this, which was really important. This is the painting.
And after this, we'll unceremoniously leave, I think, on Mark's final words. So thank you again, everyone, for joining us.
Thank you, James, and thank you again, Jarad, for your beautiful reading. A Street in Carrara after Henry Bishop. The windows are abandoned. Plasterboard leans against the wall like a teen smoking. Mold collects at the base of the apartment, a black mark smudged. Mothers spit-washed dirty faces scowling at traffic. Jimmy's uncle's beer, a fridge left out in the sun. Debris smashed in half and quarters is still debris. The developer wrote them off. Marco and his mother live in the empty building. She won't survive winter. There is nothing beyond this street. They throw rocks at cars that dare to pass. Matteo beats up his best friend. The others know not to ask questions, show pity. Today, Jimmy arrives empty-handed. Matteo is too sober for the sunlight, blinding like a single bulb and swings. Marco, trying to stop him, gets a smack. His mother, slowly coughing up her lungs, can't stop it. Marco doesn't fight back. Jimmy has never fought anyone. Matteo allows himself to succumb to gravity, falling into the rubble. A moment to swan dive, a new scar maybe. Instead, he sees her in the window. She's stopped coughing. She's smiling, looking at birds bisecting the blue sky. The others are busy staring down the world as it speeds away. Matteo hands around a hip flask, pretending tomorrow will be exactly the same.